I'm Michael Goldfried.
And I'm Stefano Brancato, and we're the co-directors of Cadence-Home.
How did you get involved in the project?
About 2 years ago, I was approached by Rada Kramer, the artistic director of Taya Company, about working with them on developing what they had created, which was with their insight conversations with recently returned vets from Iraq and Afghanistan. And I started a dramaturgy process with them of figuring out how to take this material and shape it into something that was powerful and dramatic and entertaining. And we did 2 workshops of it and over the past couple of years. And then we're fortunate enough to bring on Stefano as a co-director, where we've added this element of ensemble theater, and now this will be the first real production of this play ever. What I feel is important about this play is that I think there's something for everyone in it. For myself, I have no family members and no personal experience with being in the military. So I'm one of those Americans that feels like this all can happen and I can live my life separate from it. And what this play has done for me is open me up to the reality of the responsibilities of being a civilian in a country that has a military service and that is in 2 wars, and has changed my life in terms of my perspective on how to consider and approach and be in dialogue with veterans in a way that I never did before this play. And that's our goal for the audience, to have, for each of you, whether you're a veteran or a civilian, to encounter this theatrical experience and allow it to change your point of view for the rest of your life.
Stefano, can you speak to the actual problems that you may see in working in this kind of a genre?
Are you talking about the sort of struggles that we find in the rehearsal process and creating the show and like putting it on its feet, or are you talking more of like the dramaturgy of it, like the story and the themes?
The first part of what you started to talk about is really what we'd like to know.
Well, in terms of staging any play, there's always the basics, like dealing with physicality, actors connecting to language, the story. But in this production of Cadence-Home, like Michael was saying, there's an ensemble element, a more experimental side to it. So the call for the ensemble and their connection to the physicality and their connection to the language is much more heightened than in a naturalistic play, in terms of how they relate to sort of the direction or the sort of the mode of presentation. And in doing so, like Michael and I spend a lot of time developing things on paper, almost like storyboarding. And we come up with these ideas that we find are brilliant and great, and then we bring them into the space. And either the space doesn't hold it well, or the actual energy of what the ensemble brings isn't, the 2 things don't find a harmony together. So together during the process, we use that rehearsal time to really find what that balance is. And there's a lot of, I guess for lack of a better word, compromise on what the original idea is, or the original plan. And then together, collaboratively, we find something that works, or something that's a better choice to actually say, this is what's telling the story. This is what's holding that space really well, or holding this moment really well. And so in terms of challenges, I think that's really one of the biggest challenges, is finding how to tell this story in an interesting way that's not just characters sort of having scenes together, but finding a more artistic avenue, a more theatrical avenue into the storytelling process.
Because the play is dealing with 2 realities. There's the reality of being home, there's the reality of getting your latte and going to work and being engaged, and that's perhaps lends itself to naturalism. And then there's the reality of being haunted by things that you did and saw, and people that you've lost when you've been in service and you're back. And that needs something a little extra in terms of how to portray that theatrically. So what we're trying to do in terms of the style of the play is merge these two different realities that recently returned vets and not so recently returned vets and the civilians who are in their lives, and struggling between the reality of normalcy and something which has a lot of struggle and interiority and conflict in it. And so that's where some of the heightened language, ensemble theater, more stylized staging comes in. And we're looking to sort of generate a whole style out of these two realities, just as someone who is dealing with things in their past that they're haunted by is trying to navigate between that and the everyday wonders and normalcy of being back home.
What would you like to see happen after this initial run?
World peace.
I'm Augie Donnell and I play Maddie.
I'm Chuck Obasi and I play Donna.
How did you get involved in this production?
I personally got involved with this production. It's an interesting story. I came back to New York. I was in the Navy for 6 years, and then I came back to New York. I'm from New York, and I was going to Columbia University studying film, and I was putting together a film, and I auditioned one of the company members, Amanda Marikar, thank you. And she actually contacted, we just established a rapport, and she knew that I was a veteran and an actor and a writer. And just at that very time, Taya, who was where Amanda was, she was with them, was looking for a veteran that was an actor and a writer. And I auditioned, and this is what happened. My personal experience in the military was not as hard as a lot of the veterans that come back home. I was in the Navy, I was on a boat, I operated a nuclear reactor. There was a lot of stress, but it wasn't like I had to go out there and I wasn't fighting for my life every day. So it doesn't bring up personal issues that I feel like I have to hurdle over. It does bring up a lot of issues that I feel like a lot of my fellow veterans, a lot of my friends have to hurdle over, and also a lot of the friends that I have at home that aren't veterans. We touch on a lot of those issues as well that I feel that they're very important and very relevant to discuss and create in this forum.
Chuck, let's hear from you in terms of how you feel about being involved in this project as well.
Well, the idea of the project was kind of a discussion between me and Robert Kramer, the Taya founder, and it was a subject that really spoke to me. And when we were talking about what our next big topic was going to be as far as creating a new theater piece, I remember talking to Rod and saying, I think veterans and civilians dialogue and reconnecting would be a really good idea, something to jump on. And I was pretty much on board even before we got going.
What's the most important thing that you want your audiences to get out of seeing this production?
I really want people to realize that they have a whole lot of identities, and when it comes to veterans and civilians, it's really just people trying to redefine themselves constantly, and people constantly trying to fill voids when things are lost, and when big events happen in their lives that change. And if people can see that, it's a common hurdle that, in the words of Augie, common hurdle that people go through in life, it may be a little bit easier to connect, and it may be a little bit easier to communicate and ask questions, and there won't be as much othering, and othering does happen when it comes to veterans and civilians.
Personally, I feel like a big part of life and a big part of my life especially is creating art, and I feel like it's a very therapeutic process, especially in the instance that I'm in right now, coming back from a 6-year time in the military, surrounded by it, ensconced in it, coming back to a place like New York could be a jarring situation for a lot of vets, and I feel that it's probably the most important thing is art. I mean, I was brought up by 2 actors, and I was in that world from very young, and I think it's a beautiful thing to create and to allow others to come into your world that you've created and have some kind of insight onto them, and have them to be changed in some way, even if it's just for a short amount of time, to have some kind of thought process that's been sparked by something that we as artists have created. I think it's very important.
This project is if you want to break it down to a simple goal, it's just to provide insights. And, you know, we did speak with a lot of veterans that helped us to create this, and also to add to the authenticity of it. And we asked them simple questions. We asked the civilians we spoke to simple questions. You know, if there's a conversation you want to have with someone that you can't have, what's stopping you from having that conversation? What would you want that conversation to look like? What would you want that person to know?